We're going to be looking at 5 realistic targets for free agency for the Indiana Fever. We are working under the assumption that these 3 are coming back. Lexi's coming back. Sophie's coming back. That is the assumption that I'm working with, because if Kelsey goes, then clearly
operating under assumptions, that's the real nightmare Indiana Fever fans should be worried about. While everyone's busy arguing over whether Kelsey Mitchell will return or move on, there's a much bigger issue slipping under the radar. What if the Fever end up squandering Caitlin Clark's entire rookie contract by doubling down on the wrong roster pieces?
Player is a backup center, and I think Demiris Dantas' time with the Fever is probably done. I don't see Dantas playing with the Fever again, if I'm being honest. I think Bree Turner's not good enough. I just think in general Bree Turner is not good enough. So for me,
Elizabeth Williams is now 33, coming off a rough year in Chicago where the sky fell apart in spectacular fashion. But here's the part the box score won't tell you. Angel Reese's defensive numbers were actually stronger when Williams shared the floor with her compared to when Camila Cardoso was out there. Williams finished the season hitting nearly 50% of her shots and provided the kind of veteran leadership that locker room was starving for. The real debate isn't whether she's capable of anchoring a second unit. She absolutely is. The bigger question is whether Indiana can sign her near a minimum deal after that messy Chicago season crushed her market value. If they can pull it off, this might quietly become one of the smartest offseason pickups out there.
But this would be one of my things where I'm like, I don't hate the Fever doing this, but I don't see them doing it. So the Indiana Fever had a player a couple of years ago that is the perfect player, a much better version of Natasha Howard, but it will cost quite a lot of money to keep her, and it's Temi. I still think Temi is the perfect power forward to play beside Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. We saw it. The lineup of Caitlin Clark, Lexi Hull, Temi, Aaliyah, and
just 2 seasons back, the group of Caitlin Clark, Lexi Hull, Temi Fagbenle, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell graded out as the most efficient 5-player lineup in the entire league. And what did the Fever do? They let Temi walk. She landed in Golden State, refined her jumper, stayed on the floor, and turned into the exact stretch four Indiana has been searching for. Now, she's hitting restricted free agency. The Valkyries have to keep their whole core together on tight expansion team budgeting, while Indiana finally has real cap flexibility. The math isn't complicated. What is complicated is the Fever front office admitting they blew it by letting her leave in the first place.
I have a weird feeling if they flame out on their A option, Natasha Howard on a near max contract is coming back, and I don't think you have a championship. I don't think you can win a championship with Natasha Howard starting and Michaela Timpson as her backup. I don't think you can win a championship with that, because there are too many games. Natasha Howard is either brilliant or absolutely terrible. And the problem is that Natasha Howard does not play well with Caitlin Clark. So if the Fever are planning on winning with Caitlin...
Here's the part nobody wants to admit about Natasha Cloud. She just doesn't mesh with Caitlin Clark on the court. The data lays it out clearly. When they're out there together, the spacing shrinks, defensive rotations fall apart, and the offense grinds to a halt. Cloud is either spectacular or disastrous, with no reliable middle ground and no way to predict which version you'll get. So if Indiana is truly committed to building a roster that elevates Clark, handing Cloud anything close to max money simply isn't logical. But if the Fever strike out on every top tier free agent, there's a very real chance they talk themselves into running it back, and that's exactly how a championship window closes before it ever has a chance to begin.
Either of them can slide in. Aaliyah can slide in at the 4 if she gets the 3 ball. Temi can slide in at the 4, obviously, and then Sophie can slide up to the 4. So for me, that's your perfect rotation. Then you've got KK Timpson as a player. I'm absolutely fine with those 5 players sharing the 4-5, but it's going to cost quite a bit to get Temi out of Golden State. I do think in general that that Golden State, because they have to keep basically their whole team. Almost their entire team are free agents. So it's not going to be hard to it's not going to be easy to keep all their players together.
Poaching Temi Fagbenle from Golden State would run the Fever roughly 3/4 of a max contract. It's a hefty price tag for someone who wore an Indiana uniform just out 2 years ago, but stack that cost against the alternative. You strike out on Temi, and suddenly Natasha Cloud is back. Michaela Onyenware stays locked in as the backup, and the Fever basically roll out the same group that got knocked out in round 1. Now imagine the opposite. Picture a frontcourt trio of Elizabeth Williams, Temi Fagbenley, and Aaliyah Boston rotating at the 4 and 5, with Christy Wallace serving as the emergency option. That's elite depth. That's the kind of interior rotation that can actually trade punches with Las Vegas and New York. But none of it happens unless the Fever spend aggressively right now during Caitlin Clark's rookie contract window, when they've got the most cap flexibility they'll ever have.
Who had a disaster season for Chicago. An absolute disaster season. But it all depends on whether you believe that this is Beck Allen or whether you believe that the Chicago Sky is a shit show. I think it's the latter. I think Beck Allen as a bench option is unbelievable. Is absolutely unbelievable. I genuinely think that Beck Allen could be a 6th player of the year candidate. She can play the 4, she can play the 3. She shoots the shit out of the ball. And people don't realize that. He genuinely...
Last season, Rebecca Allen dropped 27 points in a must-win game against Dallas 27. Points that Chicago absolutely couldn't have survived without. And what happened next? Tyler Marsh sat her. After that, her minutes bounced all over the place and the entire Sky operation spiraled into pure chaos. But look at her Phoenix stint, 7.4 points per game, 36% from deep, 42% overall. Those are rock-solid reserve numbers. And let's not forget, she started for a Connecticut Sun squad that came within inches of the finals, playing under Stephanie White the same. Stephanie White now leading the Fever. Allen's jumper is pure, leave her open and it's automatic. And right now, she's trying to both rebuild her career after the disaster in Chicago, which puts her squarely in that minimum deal territory with legitimate starter potential.
Started the season. Like if you look at game logs, like there were games in Chicago, and that was the problem with her in Chicago, was the inconsistency. But if you look at games at the start of the year, she had 7 against the Fever, 11-11, didn't do much in this game, but 13-7-8. Like that's nearly 10 points a game starting the season. Then had a big lull and had 27 points in a win against Dallas, in a win where all 27 of those points were pretty much needed. Had a good and okay run for a few games. It was just an inconsistency from Tyler Marsh.
Kennedy Burke knocked down 41% of her threes and hit 46% from the floor last season, but one rough playoff stretch sent her stock tumbling fast. With the New York Liberty facing tough roster decisions, they simply can't hold on to everyone. Burke might end up being the piece they move on from to keep the core around. Brianna, Stewart, and Sabrina. Ionescu intact. She's a true 3-and-D wing, an archetype that's surprisingly rare in the WNBA. She can defend positions 2 through 4, slides much quicker than people expect, and gave Caitlin Clark serious problems in their first meeting. And because her postseason slump tanked her market value, Indiana could legitimately snag her for a bargain.
It's not going to be easy for the New York Liberty to afford to keep their team together. And Kennedy Burke might be one of those players they lose. The likes of Kennedy Burke, Izzy Harrison, they might have to pick and choose. If they want to keep Natasha Cloud, maybe they choose Izzy Harrison and say, you know what, we don't need Kennedy Burke. Kennedy Burke's not going to be cheap, because I do think she brings a lot of value in that 3-and-D role, which is a weirdly uncommon archetype, and it's an archetype that you need. She's a better defender than Beck Allen. I'm not going to say she's a better shooter. She's a better wide open shooter than Beck Allen.
Letitia Amihir brings pure energy every time she steps on the floor. She plays with edge, crashes the boards, sprints the lanes, and causes problems everywhere. The crash shooting still needs work, but she's already a more refined version of Michaela Onyenware. With her length, defensive versatility, and ability to switch across multiple Sistan positions, she fits seamlessly into modern lineups. The only question is whether the Valkyries see her as a long-term piece or if they prioritize others. If Indiana can snag her on a budget deal, she becomes the perfect utility forward, someone who can play spots 3 through 5, and beside Caitlin Clark, that athleticism becomes even more dangerous in transition. And that brings us to the bigger picture. Indiana's front office needs to grasp this. Offseason, Caitlin Clark is on a rookie deal for the next 3 years. This is the championship window. This is when you have a generational superstar making less than her market value, giving you the financial freedom to stack talent around her. The worst thing the Fever could do isn't overpaying Temi Fagbinlay, it's rolling back the exact same roster that bowed out in round 1 and talking themselves into the idea that internal development will magically solve their spacing problems and defensive breakdowns. Elizabeth Williams at 33 is the ideal veteran minimum pickup. She's a steady backup center who won't hurt you in spot minutes, finishes efficiently around 50%, defends well, and understands her role. After the Chicago meltdown tanked her value, this is the moment a smart team swoops in, but Williams is depth, not a needle mover. The real swing piece is Temi Fagbinlay. Golden State doesn't want to lose her. They're a new franchise trying to keep their entire core intact, but expansion team budgets make that nearly impossible. If Indiana puts 3/4 of a max offer in front of Fagbinlay, the Valkyries likely can't match without dismantling everything else. Temi fixed her jumper, stayed healthy, and fits perfectly next to Clark and Boston. The lineup data from 2 years ago already proved how lethal that 5-woman unit was, and Temi is even better now. Indiana already let her walk once. They can't let history repeat itself. But if the Fever miss, if Golden State matches, or Temi chooses to stay, then Indiana must pivot fast to Kennedy Burke or Beck Allen. Both are legitimate rotation pieces who upgrade the roster immediately. Burke offers more defensive upside and steadier shooting. Allen is the streak shooter who can catch fire instantly but also drift for stretches. Burke hit 41% from deep last season on strong volume, guards multiple spots, and is exactly the kind of 3-and-D wing Indiana needs next to Clark. Her playoff collapse dropped her price, and New York's cap crunch makes her attainable. Smart front offices pounce on opportunities like that. Allen is the higher variance option, but comes with real upside. She was valued enough to be included in the Jonquel Jones deal to New York, and later the Alyssa Thomas move to Phoenix. Teams wanted her until the Chicago ordeal derailed everything, but Stephanie White coached her in Connecticut, and familiarity matters. Stephanie White already knows exactly what Beck Allen can bring when she's surrounded by structure. If White believes she can help Allen reboot her career, and Indiana can land her on something close to a minimum deal, that's a gamble absolutely worth taking, and the depth pieces matter just as much. Letitia Amihere is a restricted free agent who likely won't command a big number. She's still developing, but she's long, explosive, and brings relentless energy. She's the type of player who can give you valuable matchup minutes without needing touches or a featured role. But here's the catch with all these potential additions. They're only realistic if the Fever choose to spend now. Not next offseason, not when Caitlin Clark is nearing the end of her rookie deal. Right now, this summer when Indiana has the most cap space they'll ever have, and the rare chance to build a contender around a superstar who's still making below market money. The alternative? Rolling into another season with Natasha Cloud, pretending the spacing issues will magically resolve themselves, hoping the defensive collapses somehow. Vanish, believing another year of experience alone closes the gap with the Aces and Liberty. That isn't a plan, it's wishful thinking, and hope isn't a strategy. Championship windows are shorter than people realize. Indiana has 3 seasons of time sinners. Caitlin Clark on a rookie contract, 3 years to build a legitimate contender before her. Max extension kicks in and the financial flexibility disappears. 3 years before, defenses adapt, before the league adjusts, before the window starts to close. So the real question for the Fever front office is painfully simple. Are you actually trying to win a championship, or are you more interested in running a comfortable, profitable team that makes the playoffs and quietly exits in round 1? Because those are 2 very different goals, and they demand 2 very different levels of investment. Elizabeth Williams, Temi Fagbinlay, Kennedy Burke, Beck Allen, Letitia Amihere. 5 attainable targets, 5 players who elevate the roster, 5 pieces who fit perfectly, alongside Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, and all of them are within reach if Indiana prioritizes winning over trimming expenses. Because 3 years from now, when Clark's rookie deal is gone and the window has closed, nobody will remember that they stayed under the luxury tax. They'll only remember whether or not the Fever won. So which version of the Indiana Fever shows up this offseason? The one determined to build a title contender around a generational star, or the one that trots out Natasha? Cloud again clings to continuity and wastes another year of Caitlin Clark's prime. Tell me in the comments what you think the Fever should do.